Okay, so let's dive into the world of dream analysis, but probably not in the way you're thinking. We're not going to talk about what symbols mean in the old-fashioned sense. Instead, we're going to look at a dream like, well, like a machine, an energy map of the brain in action. And it all kicks off with one single, very anxious thought. Just imagine that feeling for a second. You're in your own home, but it doesn't feel safe anymore. You've got important guests over, everything is a total disaster, and you have this deep, gut-wrenching fear that the whole building is about to come down. This isn't just some line from a story. It's the raw, emotional heart of a really bizarre and chaotic dream. So let's just lay out the scene here. A famous writer, sort of an intellectual hero, shows up at the dreamer's house. But the house, which you can think of as the mind's own structure, is in total chaos. And then things escalate. A pipe bursts, water starts gushing out of a wall, and then it's even bubbling up from the middle of the floor. This isn't just a bunch of random images. It's a puzzle our brain has built, and today we're going to find the key to unlock it.
What is our brain actually doing here? I mean, really? To get an answer, we have to look past the usual interpretations and pick up a whole new set of tools, one that treats the dream less like a poem we need to decipher, and more like a weather map of the mind.
So that brings us to our first section. We're going to introduce something called the Brain Kinematics Model, or BKM for short. And this model completely reframes what dreams are, not as stories with hidden symbols, but as visible maps of energy flowing through the brain. And this is where everything shifts. It changes the entire question we're even asking. The old way would be to ask, what does the water symbolize? But the BKM asks, what process is the water making visible? It's a huge change from talking about symbolism to talking about mechanics. At the very heart of the BKM is this concept of strain. So what's strain? Well, it's all the mental and emotional pressure that builds up from our day-to-day lives. The source material uses this great analogy. Think of it like the water pressure building up behind a giant dam. That's the core energy that the dream is trying to manage and ultimately release. And the BKM breaks this pressure down even more into two different forces we can actually look at. First, you've got vertical strain. That's the raw emotional power, the intensity of it all. In our dam analogy, that's the height of the water. Then you've got longitudinal strain. That's the story, the narrative that carries all that emotion along, kind of like the flow of the river itself over time. All right, so now that we've got the toolkit, let's go back to that dream about the ruptured pipe and see how the strain goes up and down. We're actually going to map this dream's energy from start to finish. This table here gives us a play-by-play of that energy. So when the writer arrives, the strain is pretty low, but it starts to creep up. Then, boom, the messy house, the ruptured pipe, and you see a huge surge of subconscious energy. The absolute peak, the climax, is that fear of collapse. That's total systemic overload. Then, the strain starts to drop a little as the dreamer remembers a story about his dad. The brain is turning raw emotion into a story, but then it ticks back up again when he tries to fix the leak and fails. It's this living, breathing system. So this isn't just one single emotional event. What this really shows us is that the brain isn't dealing with just one big wave of emotion. No way. It's juggling multiple, overlapping waves of strain all at once. It's not just one problem, it's a bunch of connected pressures, and that's why the journey feels so complicated. And here you can see those two main peaks of anxiety right next to each other. The first one, the huge one, is that fear of total collapse. That's the dream's main event. But then you have the second, smaller peak, a kind of microclimax of frustration when the attempt to fix things goes wrong. It just shows how the brain is processing both huge fears and small frustrations at the same time. Okay, so this brings us to the climax of our whole analysis. In all of this chaos, where is the dream's epicenter? Where does all of this energy finally converge into a single point? I mean, in this absolute mess of emotions and story elements, is there one single image that holds the key to the entire thing? Is there one point that anchors everything else? Well, according to the Brain Kinematics Model, the answer is a big, loud yes. The BKM calls this the center of image, or CI for short. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It's the focal point, the spot where all the different types of strain, the sensory stuff, the emotional intensity, the story themes, all crash together and fuse into one single powerful image. And this is the key. That erupting water, it's not just a random event or some vague symbol of emotion. It is the center of image. It's the physical manifestation of the brain's overload, the point where the pressure just got to be too much and had to be visualized in this dramatic physical way.
And you can see here why it works so perfectly as the center of image. It fuses three essential elements. You've got the form, which is the house, the structure of the mind itself. You've got the motion, which is that violent gushing of water, representing the raw subconscious energy being released. And then you have the continuum, that powerful emotion, the fear of collapse, that ties the structure to the out-of-control motion. It all snaps together in that one image.
So for our final section, let's zoom out and ask the big question. What does this tell us about why we even dream at all? According to the BKM, the whole point of a dream is to process this emotional overload and bring the system back into balance. They aren't random at all. They're a nightly, self-regulating process that is absolutely critical for our mental health. And the process is actually incredibly elegant. First, all this strain builds up while we're awake. Second, the brain goes into a dream and creates a powerful center of image, like a ruptured pipe, to visualize and contain all that pressure. And finally, the rest of the dream, the story part, is the brain's attempt to resolve that pressure, to let the energy out, and to get the system back to a state of balance, or what scientists call homeostasis. And that's really the bottom line. A dream is this dynamic, moving field of our own consciousness, and its main job is to find balance. It's a fundamental act of mental and emotional self-care that happens every single night, whether we remember it or not. And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. The next time you wake up from a bizarre, intense dream, just ask yourself, was that just a bunch of nonsense? Or were you just lucky enough to watch your own mind in the amazing, complex process of healing itself?